Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual event with Mysterious Galaxy. I am Nick, the Director of Events and Digital Marketer for the store. Today, we have brought to you a horror debut novel, Old Country. Ooh. And what a very stark book cover that is. Of course, today we have the authors Matt and Harrison Query. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hey there.
And also, you'll notice that there's a third person here. What is he doing here? That is Paul Dennison. Hello, Paul.
Good evening.
He is going to be the conversation partner for tonight. For those of you who are going to be tuning in, give introduction for everyone. Harrison is a Colorado native whose work as a writer has spawned multiple genres. He has sold projects to Lionsgate, Netflix, Amazon, and Sony, developing screenplays with Ridley Scott, Chris Columbus, Robert Zemeckis, I want to make sure I got that last name pronounced right, and Andrew Dominic. His brother, Matt, is a litigator who focuses on legal issues related to water rights, natural resources, public lands, and fish and wildlife management. And of course, conversation partner Paul Dennison. He has a master's level education, studied in Scotland for years, is now the captain of a mountain wildlife fighting crew in Colorado, and as I've been told, has a great voice. Is that true, Paul? Do you have a great voice?
I have an adequate voice, and I actually like fires, not wildlife. Quite different.
Did I say wildlife?
I like
wildland firefighting crew.
Wildlife even more. It's pretty.
It's a crazier image, though.
Yeah, that could be the subject for Matt's next book, though, wildlife.
Yeah.
Words are hard sometimes.
Thanks for that.
For everyone who hasn't yet gotten your own copy of Old Country, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? You'll notice there's a link below that says buy Old Country and get a signed book plates, because both Matt and Harrison have submitted signed book plates. So whether you purchase online, over the phone, or in person, get your own copy so you can get that book plate. And if you have any questions you want to ask Matt or Harrison, there's another link below that says ask a question, and those will be answered later on the program. I'm going to go ahead and disappear for now and leave it to our two authors to talk about their debut novel. And I'll see you all later in the program.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Okay. Matt and Harry, pleasure to be with you gentlemen tonight. And thanks again to Nick for those introductions. So I want to start with Matt. The story about this story and how it came to be is almost as interesting as the story itself. So Matt, can you, in whatever order pleases you, give us a synopsis of the book, but also tell us a little bit about how the concept originated, how it went from story to book and beyond, and when your brother Harrison sort of enters the scene, maybe you can pass it on to him to explain how the partnership began and where the story went from there.
Yeah. Well, I started posting this story in pieces on Reddit, which in total I think is about 50 pages, and it's about a young couple who strike out from the city to buy a ranch in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Idaho. And it came to me because my wife and I left the city to buy a little ranch in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, and luckily our property wasn't haunted by a seasonal spirit, but the ideas sort of started coming through, working and walking around the property, and the basic synopsis, the real overhead view of the book is, as said, a young couple leaves the city and goes to pursue a dream of running an active ranch in the mountains. And along with the usual trials of that lifestyle and not having grown up there, they find out that their property is haunted or, possesses a spirit that presents itself in a different way each season. And there's certain rituals they can follow that their neighbors and friends cue them in on to keep the danger at bay, but their backgrounds and their relationship sort of come to play and prevent them from following the rules as closely as they should.
Mm-hmm. So, Harry, when did you come to learn that Matt had written this story? How did this become a creative partnership? And
I came to know about the story well after it had been posted. I think Matt was reluctant to tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, struck out into the writing world. he shared it with me. Originally, someone had reached out to him. Someone in the film business had reached out to him with an inquiry about purchasing the rights to the story, and Matt was just in sort of one fell swoop both told me that he had written the story in the first place and asked me what I thought about selling the rights to it, which was a lot to digest in one go. So I read it and was obviously incredibly impressed by it and saw the potential for it right away and passed it off to my representatives, my manager and my agents, who felt the same way about the story, and they, did what they do and worked their magic and kind of blew it out into the market. And in very short order, we had interest and offers for a film adaptation of the original short story from, damn near every studio in town, and ended up selling the film rights to Netflix, and in basically simultaneously sold the rights to Grand Central for the novelization as well, which is pretty unusual. Normally, obviously, one comes before the other, but in this case, the film was sold first or simultaneously to the book, and we were off and running.
Excellent. So
yeah,
fantastic story. Matt, I'm curious. You said that the idea sort of started coming to you about creating the story while you were working the land on your ranch. Was there one kind of germ of the story that you can even recall as being the first moment of inspiration, or did it come to you in little pieces and evolve?
It all came in little pieces.
Yeah.
I don't think there was one particular moment. If I had to pick one, it was my wife and I, with our dog, were walking around the ranch, and we found a buck, a deer, a black-tailed deer buck that had just been killed by a gun, by a rifle, but it was like bleeding still, like it had just died, and we had been outside all day, and it was rainy and really foggy, and I was like, how on earth did this buck end up dead in the middle of our pasture, and we didn't notice someone shooting it or even hear a gun go off? And it was during hunting season, so I figured it was someone shot the deer and it jumped the fence and then died on our property. But we were just sitting there kind of speechless at this like beautiful dead creature, and I think I remember asking, like, what if this was like a demon or a beast, And that was certainly one of those moments that happen out there when you're spending a lot of time by yourself. And we were down a county road, which was off another county road, and you could hear someone coming from about 2 miles away. So if there was anyone coming anywhere near our house, even in any kind of vehicle, we had a good 15 minutes of heads up. So it's just silence at all times. We sold the farm earlier this year and moved back to Colorado, but I've yet to be anywhere that quiet since. And so that kind of silence is a good place for creepy stuff to be born.
Yeah. So, gents, I'm sure you don't want to give away the entire story for those who haven't read it yet, and if there's more you want to talk about the broad view, by all means. But I'm curious about the creative process. Once Harry read the story and the wheel started moving on the film adaptations and it being more fully written as a novel, what did your creative process as writing partners look like?
Well, it was pretty unique that we were able to do a screenplay for Netflix and write the novel at the same time.
So was that happening simultaneously?
Yeah.
So, and Harry was able to hold my hand through. So, I'd only written short stories, and I didn't know what a 3-act sort of situation was. The structure, the architecture of a novel, Harry was able to sort of hold my hand. And despite being a prolific reader, I don't really know. I didn't have a lot of experience writing a novel and understanding, the flow and the arc. But Harry was able to take the story and do what he does, and he has done with a lot of other stories, and turn it into a good, entertaining piece of writing.
It was really interesting. I mean, typically, like we were saying, a film adaptation occurs after a novel has already been written, but in this case, happening simultaneously, there was an unusual opportunity for the different formats to kind of influence one another. When you're adapting a novel into a film, there's a lot of stuff has to go. You have to truncate things. You have to change things and adapt things. And and typically, again, the novel's set in stone at that point. But in this case, the things that we were discovering and learning creatively in the film adaptation process ended up influencing the development of the novel simultaneously, which is a really cool, kind of unique opportunity. Yeah.
So, and Harry, have you done other book adaptations?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. How did this one rank? Was it a challenging story to adapt for screen, or did it flow pretty well?
Underlying conceit, it lent itself very well to a film adaptation for, I think the same reasons people were so enthralled by it from the very beginning. There's a natural tension to it, and a kind of unusual tension in that it isn't born of the uncertainty and sort of the unknown of what's lurking around the corner. It's actually a tension that comes from sort of the opposite, which is that you're told exactly what's going to happen in the beginning of the story, which is its own kind of slow boil. But so in terms of the content itself, I think it lent itself very well to adaptation. In terms of how it compared process-wise, it was just so different. The book was being written not only simultaneously, but by the same people. So it was sort of a unusually fluid thing that kind of took shape at the same time, and one thing would influence the other, which was both, there's a lot of freedom and fluidity in that, but it was also kind of difficult at times because you're kind of confusing yourself. Like something that works really well from the book might not work well for the film and vice versa. So it was a bit of a dance, but...
Sure. And you two are brothers who strong personalities and aren't afraid of a scrap. Did it ever come to wrestling matches on the floor of the bedroom?
No wrestling matches. I mean, I think there might have been, we might have annoyed the hell out of each other for other reasons that had nothing to do with the book.
You kept the flow boil.
Yeah, most of which were probably my fault. But in terms of
I don't know.
creative differences, there really weren't many creative differences. I think we were pretty much on the same page in terms of the actual process.
All right.
Harry did a lot of hand holding through, all of a sudden I was dealing with, publishers and editors, and then on the book side, and then producers and agents and the whole film furor. And Harrison did a lot of hand holding and had a lot of come to Jesus talks with me about this is how it works. This is, it was a very foreign world to me. And of course, it's our debut novel, so the book side was new to both of us. But having a professional creative writer there made it all a lot easier. And so I frustrated Harry in a lot of ways that were more administrative than creative.
Sure. Yeah. Well put. Yeah. All right, back to the book. For those of you who haven't read it, it's written from dual points of view. Harry, the husband, his wife, Sasha. Matt, tell me about that. Was it easier writing from one perspective or the other? What was it like having to change voice? Did you write one kind of in one batch and then the other? It's an interesting approach. It was
much easier to write from the guy's perspective. Writing from a woman's perspective is hard for most guys, and I had to sort of base it off all the closest women in my life, particularly my wife and my sister and our mom. And, I feel like I have the license to really flow from any guy's perspective, but from a woman's, I needed to really think hard and about the perspective and voice and, personalities of the women in my life to really make it as genuine as I could. Whereas, writing from a guy's perspective, I'd say the main male character is an amalgamation of 15 people Harry and I know, Harrison and I.
Am I 1%?
You might be 1%. You might be in there.
Okay, good.
And Sasha, and every, for those of you who don't know, that every chapter alternates in first person perspective between the husband and the wife of this relationship. And so while I can flow from, a bunch of different perspectives from the guy, I had to take a lot of time to think about, capturing the voice of a woman lead character. And she's certainly based on a far smaller number of people in my life than the guy.
So, and maybe this is my bias as a reader, but I know your wife, Sonya, quite well.
Yeah.
And it's quite unmistakable, the similarities.
You're not the first one.
Tell me if I'm stepping across boundaries, but was there anything about, because Sasha is so like your wife Sonya, after Sonya read the book, was there anything that she was pissed off by, words you put in her mouth or actions that just didn't align? None of that.
She knew that it wasn't her, and the background. I think both main characters are from, to put it frankly, pretty fucked up families and darker backgrounds, and Sonya did not.
She gave you some license.
Sonia's mom was a little more concerned with how I painted Sasha's parents in the book than Sonya was. But my in-laws were a little more offended, but not actually. It all went well.
What about the sort of second lead set of characters? Lucy and Dan, am I remembering their names correctly? Were they based on anyone in real life?
They're based on Lucy and Dan, our real neighbors.
Those are their names? Did you bake them a pie for their royal?
No, they're back, they're like backcountry Oregon ranchers. And I think I told them I was writing a book and using them as characters. And Dan was like, well, that's neat. Good for you. And he, I'm going to send him a copy soon, but in real life, we moving onto a big piece of property and getting sheep and horses and cows and not knowing what the hell we were doing. All of a sudden we had these two 80-year-old neighbors who'd been there for 45 years, and they really taught us a lot and held our hands. And, I think in the first week or two, Dan and Lucy in real life walked us through our own property and pointed out like where the mushrooms grow and what the ditches do at different times of the year with different rainfall and snow melt, and where there's certain fire danger and where the elk usually screw up the fencing. And, it was the real life Dan and Lucy really did hold our hands through becoming ranch owners. And in the book, they do the same with the main characters, but they're also sort of the stewards of the rituals that they need to follow to keep this spirit at bay. And
I'm starting to get a better understanding when you explained that it really came to you in pieces. It really sounds like there are a lot of touch points in your life on the ranch that brought this to be. And Harry, when you came into the creative process, were you involved in crafting the characters? It kind of sounds like Matt had a lot of the characters fleshed out. Did their traits change?
I think the original short story as it existed on Reddit was was long enough that I think the characters were pretty well rounded and dimensional at that point. I think, we iterated and expanded on them and certain details of what they would do and, certain background elements. But I think there was we were following a pretty clear compass at that point that Matt had created as far as who they were.
So without giving too much of the book away, I think everybody probably knows, or you gather from the dust jacket, that the hauntings or sort of the spirit that possesses the land, it manifests itself in a seasonal progression of different manifestations. So did those have any sort of concrete inspirations, or did you draw on anything, or did they really just sort of spring out from your shared imaginations?
I mean, each season really does have its own spirit, to be as cliche as possible. There's in the spring you have to worry about runoff on a property like that, and the summer you got to worry about fire danger. In the fall you have to make sure you have all your wood cut for winter. In winter you got to make sure you have your snow plow on properly. And so each season really does present its own unique challenge in the rural landscape, and that's sort of the genesis story of why each season the spirit did a unique thing.
Do you want to save any of the greater detail about the seasons and their manifestations and
Sure.
Wars,
sure.
Not going to more. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll let the readers uncover them.
Discover it on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked a lot about it, Matt. I wanted to ask you about the ranch in Oregon and how much that informed your creativity, but I think you've explained that pretty clearly and
cool.
Yeah. So let's see here. So, Harry, let's talk about your writing background because I've always known Matt was articulate, and I surely imagined that he was capable of writing imaginative and compelling writing. But you've been a professional writer for longer. So can you talk a little bit about your writing portfolio? It seems like you have sort of a wider band of genres and premises that intrigue you and that you like to create and explore and adapt. So talk a bit about that and how this sort of fits into your creative concept.
Yeah, I've written in a lot of different genres. Almost everything, I guess, other than romantic comedies. I think I've ticked most of those boxes.
You'd be very good at that too.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not
They'd
sure
be
about
rated
that.
R, but they'd be good.
Yeah. Romantic tragedies, perhaps. Story of my life. But I've written, I've written action films and dramas and a lot of stuff that has to do with crime and criminal behavior in law enforcement, war films. Again, sort of a pretty wide range. As far as horror, one of the first projects I sold was a film I wrote for Lionsgate that was sort of an exorcism concept, and since then I've done a couple other horror things. So this fit into a category that I've had a bit of experience and familiarity with, which was nice because it informed both obviously the script adaptation part, but the novel part as well. I think some of those tools that you develop in writing horror, I think were brought to bear and helpful. It's kind of like writing an action movie. When you write an action movie, you talk a lot about the set pieces. The plane crash and the shootout and the car chase, and it's kind of similar with horror in a way. You got to have those big. You want the sort of slow boil throughout, and the gradually building. Then you've got, without spoiling anything from the book, you have these big scenes where you really let the fangs out and you try to scare the shit out of them. So, I had some experience doing that, which was helpful. And yeah, this is interestingly in Hollywood.
So is there any, Harry, would you say there's like a unifying theme, or not necessarily, because as a screenwriter and somebody who's written and worked pretty prolifically, I'm sure some of the writing you've done has just been a job that came along at the right place at the right time. But when it's more strictly a creative pursuit that kind of aligns with your creative passions, is there sort of a singular theme or anything that sort of drives you or inspires you?
For me, interesting. I don't know if there's a single theme. Without getting too
Without getting too what?
I suppose death is a fairly common theme. Is not, which is not absent from this either. Both what I
Harry, it's kind of sounding to us like you're moving between different levels of a fishbowl. That last
really?
Get a little quiet. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much you missed, but death, sadly, is a consistent theme and things that I've worked on and certainly present in this piece as well. The ways in which death affects people's lives and grief and how it manifests differently for people, and the conflicts that it creates and the way it animates people in strange ways.
That's a good enough unifying theme. As any other. Yeah. I could actually find the whole time. I just wanted to make you say death.
Okay.
Yeah.
Story of my life again. Yeah.
So talking more about sort of what inspires, what motivates, and what helps you develop as writers. Matt, this being your first major creative enterprise, and knowing both of you guys so well as friends, I know you have a very serious connection to the West. You're a very experienced hunter. You've fished professionally and almost daily recreationally. You're a wildland firefighter now. Matt and I worked wildfires in Texas just a couple of weeks ago. So it's clear that your life is very rooted in the American West, and this story clearly is as well. So is that inspiration? Did it grow specifically out of being on a ranch and that particular setting, or do you have this kind of an interest or connection or creative attraction to the West as a more general setting?
Well, it's where I've always been, and it's where I spend my time, and it's my life. And so I'm not as nimble of a writer as others, and this genre, this area, at least as far as the setting goes, it's very comfortable, and I can write and flow pretty well. Whereas it'd be a lot harder for me to write a story about something that's going on in the city, or even anywhere else in the world.
Sure.
Whereas like the Western U.S., the Rocky Mountain West, Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, the deserts, it's all kind of home. And so, and even for Harry too, it's like maybe I spend a little more time recreating out there, but both of us it's home. And so, writing about the light in the mountains, or like that feeling when you can feel autumn coming on in the wind, it's like that stuff comes a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so setting a story somewhere that I'm very familiar with, it's honestly, it's a crutch. It's like, it's an easier way to write than it would be to just strike out on a random setting and come up with something like that. But putting a story in the mountains, in the rural Western, North America, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So it's both something I'm experienced and comfortable flowing with, and it's a crutch. It's easier to write about.
Sure.
Yeah.
With the last few minutes we have, I want to talk a little more about just your lives as writers. And Harry, starting with you, you both share this quality, and I'm fortunate to be part of this discussion and to know you as friends. But both of you guys do this. When a good turn of phrase is spoken, or you're overhearing a well-paced conversation, you both have this sort of physical reaction. Harry, for you, it's this little hand gesture of quality. Matt, it manifests a little differently. I can't quite put my finger on it. But starting on that point, but the broader question is sort of what do you do in your day-to-day life that makes you a better writer? But sticking with my example, do you listen for good writing when you're just out on the street, in a bar, at a dinner? Is being a listener part of what makes you develop the ear for dialogue and writing generally?
It's interesting because a lot of people, I feel like, give the answer that the thing that makes them a better writer is being a reader, which is certainly true. But for me, to your point, it's much more about talking to people. I mean, some of my favorite writers are people I've never written, and just people I know in the way they talk. I feel like that's a far more interesting way to be inspired.
So I got that.
You nailed that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That same for you, or does your muse come
Very
from
similar.
broader places?
Yeah. I mean, Harry and I will often be watching the same series or a movie and be like, "Did you hear that line? That one line? It's so good." But yeah, I mean, hearing people, being around people who are good conversationalists, or just someone who says very few things very well.
Yeah.
But I read a lot, and I know Harry does too, but I'd say the majority of my inspiration comes from reading.
Okay. Yeah. I like Harry's answer better.
Yeah,
Reading's
Me
cool.
too.
And I hope everyone reads the book.
Yeah.
Anything else? Just it's sort of an obnoxious question. What made you become a writer? But is there anything you can sort of identify?
I can real quick. It was Harrison.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my little brother. I mean,
little brother can do it.
Well, yeah, it's
There you go.
not necessarily a competitive sense, but it was like, it turned writing into a very real, like, oh, this is something that you can, like, look at what he's doing. This is a real thing. Whereas I always had ideas spinning around in my head, and I had some success sharing short stories on Reddit, but as far as becoming a writer, it was. I mean, being a litigator, I wrote a lot of really boring shit that, a judge and the opposing counsel were my audience, but it was.
Hopefully they gave you
the mechanics. Yeah, they were
well said.
Yeah, there was some of that, but there was a lot of, being able to sort of turn the mechanics of writing that I maybe did have into something cool and creative and fun and entertaining. Harrison was the one to show that it was possible. Yeah.
Before we turn it over to questions, what's next for you boys? I know, Harry, you've got a lot of irons in the fire with screenplays, but are you going to continue this creative partnership?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Another book coming down the pipe, which we can't really get into details about, but it's in a similar genre and will hopefully equally scare shit out of people. And
That's it.
more on that soon. Yeah.
Good. So another book's coming at least, and I think we all hope to see this one turn to screen. That'll be exciting development, and hope
Gears
to see,
are turning there as well.
Yeah. Hope to see in print and see on the screen a lot more from you brothers. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for the conversation. And this is a new platform for me, so I don't know if any questions have been asked. If anyone in our audience,
see it on the bottom. It says ask a question, and then there's a 4 next to it. I think if you click that 4.
Very good. Okay. The first comment is, just familiarizing myself. How is the process of writing with both of you living away from each other? And were you apart for the entire creative?
Yeah, for a lot of it.
Yeah, for a lot of it. Yeah.
But then a lot of it we were actually together. And so
yeah, I mean, so much of the writing you do, even if you're collaborating with someone who's in the same house as you, the actual sitting down and writing you're going to do on your own anyway.
Yeah.
And then you're going to change it, so it doesn't really make a big difference whether you're there in person or not, in my experience.
Yeah. If Harry was in the house with me and we were working on a scene, I would still email it to him and then have him
exactly.
And so
it's not like you're sitting there
make
writing.
a huge difference. And before we started writing a book, we talk every day. So
yeah.
Okay. And so was it mostly that sort of like ping pong?
Yeah.
You work it, send it to Harry, or did you guys ever, around the hearth with a bourbon?
We did a lot of both.
Let's dive into Sasha's darkest secrets.
Yeah, we did a lot.
You do
both.
you iterate that way, but the actual words on the page, you're not going to sit and do that with each other.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be pretty boring.
Like the book we're working on now and the screenplay for the next project, we're doing a lot more bourbon around the hearth.
Yeah,
for sort of big picture.
I got to sit in on one of those.
Yes, you did.
Yes,
you did. Yeah.
Good. Without major spoilers, were there moments or scenes that differ greatly between the novel and the movie screenplay just because they wouldn't work in that particular format?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the movie set pieces, as is the case with anything in the movie, you just have so much less available real estate.
Say that again, Harry. You were a little low volume.
Can you hear me now? Is that okay?
Yeah. Good.
In the script, and this is pretty typical of any adaptation, things happen faster and a little bit bigger. You don't have the available real estate in the screenplay to slow burn things the same way. And the way you have to scare people is much more visual and noisy than how you can scare people in a book, because you don't have an omnipotent storyteller in somebody's brain. You have to do it all visually. So it's a bit faster, it's a bit louder, it's a bit bigger, which is typical of a movie adaptation. But I think anyone that reads the book, if and when they see the film, will feel that it's very faithfully adapted and hopefully scares them in slightly different ways. Because you want that too. You want people to not feel like they're just seeing exactly what they already remember.
Totally. Matt, since you created the original short story and then the novel was developed a little more collaboratively, but it's still kind of your baby. Were there any sacrifices that you had to make in the development of the screenplay that frustrated you, or you really felt like something key was being lost?
I mean,
you got it.
I guess there's two answers. The first is Harry knows what he's doing with the screenplay. So every time I got to review and work on it, it was like, yeah, I guess that makes more sense for the movie.
Yeah.
And then B, it's there. How do I put that into words? There's a movie's just a very different thing. So no, I didn't feel like I had to let go of anything. And to be completely honest, Netflix had already paid us. So I was like, it's going to be what it's going to be. And it's not only, Harrison and I, mostly Harrison writing the screenplay, but there's a lot of producers and studio folks chiming in with opinions and stuff. And so you realize pretty quickly that it's not just your baby anymore. Yeah, it's a team thing. And so you have to sort of let go of, possession.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have in the box? What sort of research went into the writing? Matt, sounds like the research was pretty hands-on.
Yeah,
branching.
yeah, a lot of it.
Yeah.
There's, like I said, our place was in South Central Oregon, whereas the book takes place on the Idaho side of the Tetons, where I'd been grouse hunting before and fishing, but didn't live there. So a lot of geographical research.
Yeah.
It was mostly just like making sure when I say west, it's west.
Yeah. Do you want to share that comment you made about the editors? I thought this was just a fascinating.
Oh yeah, the editors at Grand Central are so fantastic that in the copy editing phase, they'd actually sent me a map that they had drawn based on their reading of the story of the property and where the national forest is and where the mountains are, where the county roads are, and if they're standing under the tree, are they really facing east or are they facing west? And they sent me about 24 directional geographic specific questions, and I have to admit that on 2 of them I was wrong, and the copy editors were like, he must be facing east. This can't be the direction of the mountains based on my understanding of this landscape. And I was like, God damn, they're right. So the Grand Central Hatchet copy editors they're wizards.
Dialed away.
Yeah, they're dialed away.
Yeah. Harry, anything to add? Did you have to do any special research once you joined?
Not really. I mean, both between the foundation of the original short story and Matt's lived experience on the ranch, I was able to pretty effectively just kind of climb into the saddle and
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Good. This is a funny question for me to read. Do either of you keep to strict writing schedules? And I just laugh because, Harry, if you keep to a strict writing schedule, that's the only schedule you keep to. Harry annoys us all by never being where we expect him to be.
No, the answer would be no. No. Matt, obviously, from his academic and legal career, has the ability to keep to a schedule like that. Whereas I will write, I'm as likely to be up at 3 a.m. writing as I am at 11 a.m. or at 4 p.m. It's chaos. So,
and I'm teasing you because I've walked in at all hours, and you're obviously a very disciplined writer.
Oh, I'll work, but it's just
when the spirit moves you.
When the spirit moves me. Yep.
What about you, Matt?
Harry answered it for me.
The same way?
I mean, no, I can keep a slightly more disciplined schedule, but I really need a deadline. It's like when there's an objective there, I can sort of start creating a schedule for myself and go and sit down in front of my computer, and whether it's a very productive day or not, well, who knows? But sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
So for book 2, are you going to have to kind of set some deadlines for yourself, or
no? The
publishers
will
will
do that.
keep you in mind.
Yeah, I can rely on them.
Good.
Yeah.
And I'm curious for both you guys, dovetailing on this question. Do you need a sort of the right environment for writing? Are you writing in your head when you're out for a walk with your dog, or is it?
I can't write from home. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I cannot be in my house and do any work, whether it's writing or any other kind of work. I have to be out of my house. So, go. In the case of our first book, my office. Yeah.
Harry, what about you?
I can write pretty flexibly in different places. I don't really have any one time or place.
Do you guys write well, sort of, if you've got the deadline, or if it's just, the house is quiet? Harry, can you kind of pick up the pen and write any time, or is there sort of undefinable inspiration that needs to
not well
to be in the mood?
Well all the time? I can write, but if it's going to be good, it's got to be,
it's got to be right.
Yeah, you got to feel it. In my experience.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. All right. Particularly in the novel, were there any characters that grew or lessened in importance from the first draft to the last?
I don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, there's 5 main characters, and so
We haven't talked about the dog at all.
Oh, 6. Excuse me.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. The dog is the most accurately described character in the book based on a real life living creature. My
Golden
dog.
Retriever is a couple hundred feet away.
Yep. But no, it from the short story, there was those 6 characters, and they maintained their primal the big roles in the book, and I'd say they only grew as far as the novel side because you're given a lot more real estate, and we had the short story to sort of accordion out into a novel and develop the characters even more. And so I'd say no, the main characters grew in depth and in sort of their dynamicness, and we added more characters that just couldn't make it into the short story.
Good.
Yeah. Sound right, Harry?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So, if you want to give a plug for your dog, Tib, since we really ignored Dash in this whole conversation.
Yeah. Well, Dash he's a main character in the book, the dog, the couple's dog. He's maybe the wisest one, as is often the case in our life. Our dog is we just had our first kid, and everyone said, "Oh,
the love.
You're never going to give your dog the same amount of love," and they were all full of shit. we love our dog just as much.
Your heart grows.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but the dog's a great character.
Let's see. It looks like there's maybe a little bit more in the chat box, but I don't think any new questions. Somebody's just, I think, saying an amen to the dog chat. Well, Harry, any closing comments? Anything I didn't ask about, or to your satisfaction?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I have to say is that everyone needs to go and buy this book immediately.
They sure do.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, for putting this all together.
Yeah. And I have one last question for you, gentlemen. Where can
Sure.
people find you on social media? Got to do your plugs.
So we have Harrison has an Instagram, and I now have an Instagram, but it's the Instagram of the book.
Yeah.
So it's Old Country Book, and I'm pretty sure if you search Old Country in Instagram, you'll find it. And if you go to Grand Central's website, their page for the book, you can find it. You can find it at Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Amazon, Indie Books, and dozens of other places to go pick it up.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone who's ordering it, if you order it through Mysteries Galaxy, you will get that signed book plate.
Particularly
by Matt and
Mysteries
Harrison.
Galaxy.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yep. That's exactly who you should buy it from. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much, Matt and Harrison. Congratulations on your book coming out. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
I can't really imagine like writing the novel and the screenplay at the same time. Like just crazy different beasts.
It was pretty
All right.
far out and fast.
And thank you, Paul, so much for being the conversation partner. You hit it out of the park, dude.
Thank you, Nick. My first time doing anything like this. So
Well done.
More to come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
all right. Thanks, boys.
All right, guys.
All right. Good
Thanks,
night,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.